Two fake cops tried to arrest my wife right in our own driveway, and 12 seconds later they were both unconscious, bleeding all over the concrete. That's how fast my suburban weekend turned into a battlefield, and that's how I learned my own HOA president had been plotting against my family for years. It was a Saturday in Austin, Texas, one of those blistering hot afternoons where all I wanted was to nurse my smoker, babysit a brisket, and maybe sip a cold beer while my wife Maria organized her vet supplies. That's who she is. Emergency animal medicine heart of gold, never stops working for others. I was standing there thinking life felt safe, almost too safe. And that's when I saw the bright orange notice slapped on her windshield. Big, bold red letters, Final Enforcement Notice. Arrest authorized. My stomach dropped. At first I laughed it off, HOA garbage, right? Something about lawn height or mailbox paint. But the paper looked official, like city paperwork with language about willful violations and detainment. Maria looked at me wide-eyed, asking Logan, "What is this?" Before I could answer, a white Ford Explorer rolled up. Two men got out uniforms crisp enough to fool anyone. Badges, radios, handcuffs. But my instincts screamed fake. No department ID, no name patches, their eyes darting like they were nervous. Real cops don't move like that. One of them, Colt, walked straight up with a clipboard voice firm. "Dr. Perry, you're in violation of municipal code. Commercial vehicles aren't allowed in residential zones. You're under arrest." The other guy, Brad, drifted to block her escape, handcuffs shining in the sun. Maria froze. She's tough under pressure, but fear was winning. She demanded a warrant, tried to reason. Brad pulled out the cuffs, told her to turn around. That sound, the metal snap, it was the line they could never uncross. I stepped forward, calm but burning inside. "Officer, show me your warrant. Show me your credentials." Colt barely glanced at me, told me to step back. Then he reached for a taser. Brad moved for Maria's wrists, and that's when I stopped being a backyard husband and became what I was trained to be. Delta Force doesn't hesitate. 12 seconds. That's all it took. Elbow to the bridge of Colt's nose, cartilage shattered like a branch snapping in a quiet forest. He dropped instantly, blood spraying across my driveway. Brad lunged, clumsy in comparison, and I slipped to the side, uppercut clean to his jaw. Teeth flew, his body collapsed. Silence except Maria's breathing and the beeping of my smoker timer. I checked their airways, pulses, muscle memory from combat medic training, and told Maria to call 911. My hands were steady, but my mind was screaming, what the hell just happened? When the cops arrived, they found fake uniforms, fake paperwork, but real injuries. Colt needed reconstructive surgery. Brad's jaw was wired shut. Detective Miller studied the arrest notice and Colt's cracked phone. A text flashed on the screen. "KG, make arrest stick. Example needed. KG, Kimberly Green, my HOA president." Now I had known Kimberly as the perfect suburban dictator. Blazer, clipboard, fake smile. The kind who writes you up for having the wrong shade of mulch. But this was something else. At the station, Miller pulled files that made my blood run cold. Kimberly wasn't just some petty neighborhood tyrant, she had history. Military history. Turns out my fallen teammate Mark Stevens had listed her as his emergency contact. She'd been his online girlfriend before he died overseas. And she had something else, his laptop packed with personal journals about our missions. 6 years she'd been holding that thing. 6 years she'd been reading about me, my leadership decisions, the kind of impossible calls you make in combat when lives are on the line. She decided I was the reason Mark never came home. And now she was here in my neighborhood, president of the HOA, turning her grief into a war against me and my wife. It didn't stop with fake cops. She had a contractor, David Green, admit that she'd been paying him to dig up dirt on military families. 11 other families had been forced to leave neighborhoods before us. Same playbook every time, phony violations, constant pressure, financial bleeding until they gave up. We were just next on her list. That's when the ground under me cracked. Kimberly was filing complaints with city code enforcement, sending health inspectors after Maria's vet van zoning officers to my front porch. She was feeding edited recordings to federal investigators, twisting my words into threats. And the worst part, Army CID knocked on my door investigating me for security breaches because she'd given them Mark's journals and claimed I'd been leaking tactics into civilian disputes. I can't lie, I broke. Sitting there under federal questioning, listening to agents ask whether I used combat tactics on neighbors, I felt crushed. What if Mark had really doubted me? What if my leadership got him killed and this woman was right to destroy me? Guilt is a cancer that eats you alive. I started to believe her. Started to think maybe I should just leave, let the neighborhood have their peace. But Maria, God, she's tougher than me, sometimes looked me in the eyes and said, "Logan, we're not running, we're not hiding, we fight back. For us and for every other family she's destroyed." That snapped me out of it. So we fought. We dug into records, leaned on allies, and one night at the community center, everything came to a head. The place was packed, neighbors glaring the air thick like a powder keg. Kimberly marched in with her laptop and projector, painting me as some ticking time bomb combat vet turned neighborhood menace. She showed medical photos of Colt's shattered nose. Brad's jaw wired shut claimed I was a danger to civilians. She played doctored audio where my voice talked about eliminating targets and military efficiency stripped from casual conversations. People gasped, and for a second I thought I was finished. Then Mike Rodriguez, a neighbor drowning in debt, stood up. He was supposed to sell me out. Kimberly promised him a clean slate if he testified. Instead, he said, "She offered me money to lie." But Logan never threatened anyone except those men trying to kidnap his wife. "I'll keep my debt. I won't sell my friend." His words cracked the room in half. One by one, neighbors admitted how they'd been manipulated. Mrs. Patterson confessed to spying, thinking she was preventing violence. Bill Thompson admitted he'd been tricked into psychological profiling disguised as HOA security. The tide turned, and then the doors opened, and David Green walked in carrying a banker's box. He dumped contracts, receipts, recordings on the table. Proof that Kimberly had stolen HOA funds, hired him to target families paid for those fake cops. Then he pressed play on an audio recording. Kimberly's own voice, cold and clear. Military families disrupt property values. Eliminate them. The room erupted. Shouts, demands, hands raised for a vote. 53 neighbors voted her out on the spot. Her mask cracked, her voice shook, but she tried one last threat. "You'll all face federal consequences for protecting this violent man." She packed her laptop, her perfect blazer trembling, but the power was gone. That was it. The moment the tyrant lost everything. Not from my fists, not from my training, but from truth laid bare in front of the people she thought she owned. And standing there chest-tight, heart-pounding, I realized the lesson I'd nearly forgotten: bullies win when good people stay silent. But when you stand your ground, when you call out the lies and refuse to break, even the strongest manipulator collapses. Never underestimate the power of a community that decides it won't be controlled.